Spoiler alert. The following will contain spoilers for WandaVision. What's up, everybody? It's me, E-Man, from E-Man's Movie Reviews. If you've been watching WandaVision up until this point, then you've probably noticed that a lot of strange things are going on. One thing people have been wondering about is what exactly is happening with Monica Rambeau's character. So I wanted to take a moment just to explain what's going on with her character, how the show is making sense of it, and where they eventually will take her character based off of what we know for now. All of that coming up next. Okay, so let's go over what we know about Monica right now, and then we can dissect what's really going on with her. We were first introduced to Geraldine in WandaVision as one of the residents of Westview. She also eventually befriends Wanda. However, we learn that she's actually been an agent of S.W.O.R.D. the whole time, and her real name was Captain Monica Rambeau. When Monica was speaking to Wanda and the topic of Pietro and Ultron came up, Wanda got real heated and booted Monica out of the Hex barrier. While at the S.W.O.R.D. base, she had some medical tests performed with the results coming back inconclusive. Then, Monica tried to plan re-entering the Hex, but Darcy claimed that it was too dangerous for her because Monica's blood work revealed that her cells have been rewritten. So what does all that even mean? Well, I think the very first thing we have to do is kind of explain the nature of the Hex and kind of like what it does. We know that when things enter into the Hex, they conform to whatever time period or setting according to the warped reality in Westview. When it came to Monica, we saw that her modern day clothes had now been transformed to fit right along the relative time period within the TV sitcom. Later in the show, Monica came to the revelation that before she went into the Hex, she was wearing a bulletproof Kevlar vest. When S.W.O.R.D. examined her transformed clothing, it was discovered that the clothing had now been a fusion of sorts with that same bulletproof vest. So her 70s attire actually became bulletproof too, now that it's been remixed. So the most important thing to know about the Hex barrier is that it has the ability to transform things and rewrite reality. And that also happens on an atomic or molecular level. So let's kind of use food for example. Let's pretend that Monica's modern day clothing was like a grilled cheese sandwich. When she went into the Hex, it converted that grilled cheese into a cheese quesadilla. It essentially took the same ingredients and remixed it into something else, but similar. Here's something to pay attention to. Before Wanda added the red security layer of protection to the Hex, up until that point, if something had been remixed, that same thing would leave the Hex unchanged. For example, we've seen the S.W.O.R.D. agent going into the Hex and have his entire outfit changed into a beekeeper suit. The cable line that was attached to him became a jump rope. Despite that transformation, when it was pulled outside of the Hex, we were left with the remixed version. In this case, the jump rope. In other words, the transformation stayed the same because the ingredients stayed the same. Now this brings us back to Monica. When she got kicked out of the Hex, Wanda had used her powers in order to force her out. If you pay attention very closely, Monica was imbued with Wanda's powers as she was exiting the Hex. Now this is the same phenomenon that happened with one of the drones that S.W.O.R.D. sent into the Hex. It's likely that Wanda used her magic to disable it and the missile attached. As we can see here, Wanda's red powers are still embedded into the drone after she came out of the Hex with it. Now remember what I said about the Hex. It will remix whatever ingredients are present at the time. This time, Wanda's powers that were attached to Monica are serving as another ingredient that is going to be remixed yet again. So, in keeping in with our previous food examples, Monica started as a grilled cheese sandwich, became a cheese quesadilla, but Wanda's red power that was attached acted, let's say, like tomato sauce. So the moment Monica crossed the Hex again, she turned into a cheese pizza. This is why Darcy was saying that Monica's blood work had her cells changing on a molecular level. If it wasn't for Wanda's tomato sauce magic, then when Monica got kicked out of the Hex, The only thing that would have been affected would have been her clothing. Now that we know what was going on with Monica on a molecular level, this kind of gives us a little bit better understanding of why her x-rays came back so strange looking. They were not an error or a malfunction of the machine. Rather, that's just what her body actually looks like under an x-ray now. Now, since we have not reached the end of the show yet, we're just going to have to actually use some of the comic books to kind of fill in these final gaps. In the comics, Monica was working as a security or law enforcement officer and was working on a mission to stop some bad guys from using interdimensional energy. To make a long story short, she smashed the circuits to a machine and a lot of that energy went into her, thus transforming her into a being of pure light and energy. She then goes on to become the very first female Captain Marvel and later goes by other aliases like Spectrum, Pulsar, and Photon. You know, just like her mama. She would gain abilities to shoot energy blasts and fly at the speed of light. Essentially, that's what her body is made of, which actually explains why the X-ray in WandaVision looked the way it did. Her body is now light and energy, and if you look closely, you can also see a bit of an outline of her body showing this. As for the future of Monica's character, it's more than likely that WandaVision is giving us her origin story now because she will be featured in Captain Marvel 2. My guess is that they're probably going to display some of her powers at the end of WandaVision, or maybe they'll just end off with like a little hint of her powers, maybe her eyes turn yellow or something of that nature. By the way, I know that some of you may be wondering, does this mean that anyone who enters in or out of the Hex will get powers too? I'd say no. The main reason why Monica is different is because of Wanda's powers that were attached to her while she was going through the Hex. Other people, as far as we know, aren't being changed on a molecular level, but Wanda's special ingredient of power is the main key reason why Monica is more than likely going to have powers. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this explanation for Captain Monica Rambeau. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. If you're new here and you like what you see, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and make sure you hit that bell so you don't miss out the next time I drop a video. Also, I'll be going live this Friday at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, and I'll be doing a live reaction spoiler chat with all of you so we can talk about the latest episode of WandaVision. And given the way it's going and given what they're setting up, I'm guessing there's going to be a lot to talk about. So please make sure you're there at 7 o'clock so we can talk about it because it's going to probably be nuts and mind-blowing. You can also check out my other WandaVision breakdown videos or just any other videos on my channel. In the meantime, I've got more videos and reviews to do for you all. And until next time, I'll see you all later.